Hi, it's Amy, and today we have a very short essay by Leigh Hunt. And Leigh Hunt was an essayist and a writer who published most of his work in the earlier part of the 19th century. This is, of course, a reprint of his work that I'm reading here. But there is a very short essay here, which is part of a larger work, a larger collection of thoughts that he's titled On the Borders of Poetry. And this is my favorite part of On the Borders of Poetry. This is part 8, titled Beauty Not Exaggerated by Imagination. They say that I speak too highly of what I admire, and that half the beauties which I discern in any object I put there myself. Believe them not. Nature has been before us. We only read what she has written. If others cannot read as much, is that the fault of the book? No, it is their own. Look at one of the simplest and the most beautiful objects in the world, a cheek, and tell us, how came it? What a thought was the cheek itself when nature created it? And do you suppose that a vulgar eye estimates it enough? Put the question to those who can do something like it themselves, to Raphael or to the poets. As the poet's thought is worth what it produces, so the cheek of beauty is worth what it can suggest. And so that is it. That is the piece. And I just sort of like this idea of beauty being in the things themselves. And, beauty is there. We have only to perceive it. And just because we perceive beauty in something that others somehow miss or don't necessarily see or understand, doesn't mean it's not there. It just means that the others are not perceiving it as we are, and perhaps, it's not the fault of the object that others don't see the beauty in it. It is perhaps, the fault of the beholder. Take that thought as you will. But I've been quite enjoying this little collection of essays by Leigh Hunt so far. And there's a great one in the back on his books, and a great essay in the start on pocketbooks. And at the moment, I'm reading through one titled Of the Sight of Shops. And he does talk about coming in from the country back into a city, into an urban space. And saying, he says here, I underline this because I thought it was, relatable as well. If you have been solitary, for instance, for a long time, it is pleasant to get among your fellow creatures again, even to be jostled and elbowed. And I think, emerging from isolation in the past few years, last summer when everyone, at least in my area of the world, when everyone really got out and started doing things again, it was kind of this odd, surreal experience where I stepped out into a busy mall again, or I was in a busy transit station, or just on a public sidewalk full of people. And it almost felt good to get jostled around a bit, to hear that buzz of, people talking. Things that ordinarily would drive me absolutely nuts and I would hate. And I think that irritation is coming back. I don't enjoy it so much, but there was just sort of that period of time when it was so good just to experience those things again, because I'd been in a space of solitude for so long. And you get that experience too when you go from, spending a few weeks in a very rural place on a holiday and then coming back to the city and just being with other people again. So 200 years from beyond the grave, and it still makes sense to me.